Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj. Thank you for joining. So we will continue with our discussion on the fourth canto, second chapter from verse 21. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udire Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtiki Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Guru Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vācānam pangam nagate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Guru Dinataranam Paramanandam Madhavam. So quick recap, this chapter started with an inquiry from Vidur about what happened with respect to Sati. Why was she not able to have any children with the great Lord Shiva? In response to that, Maitreya, he talks about the yagya that is arranged by Daksha and how all the great personalities, the Brahma Rishi, even Lord Brahma himself comes. When Daksha enters, then everybody stands up to offer respect to him, with the exception of Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. And Daksha accepts the fact that Lord Brahma being his father and in a respectable position, he actually goes and offers respect to Brahma. But then he's upset that Lord Shiva does not stand to greet him. And so he begins to criticize Lord Shiva. So he talks about so many things that he finds unpalatable about Lord Shiva. That he is in an inferior position with respect to status, being his son-in-law, and he lives in crematoriums, he smears his body with ashes, he associates with the most fallen creatures, he is without any sensibility. So he goes on and criticizes, and then finally he curses Lord Shiva, that from this day onwards, the offerings that are made to the demigods, you will not get a portion of them. And Srila Prabhupada mentions that the curse is actually a benediction for Lord Shiva, because his position is not like that of the other devas. He has a transcendental position. And because this yogic offerings are predominantly done by those who are in Karam Kand with material desires for material reasons. So the fact that Lord Shiva would have to partake of them, would force him to associate with these materially minded people. And Lord Shiva is always absorbed in the meditation of Krishna. So the curse of Daksha actually does not disturb Lord Shiva at all. But his associates are upset. Specifically, his associates, one of his close associate, Nandishwar. And he begins and starts to counter curse Daksha. Now, Daksha has already left right after cursing. He despite the pleas of those in the in the assembly for him to stay back, he simply walks away, considering them also to be bereft of intelligence, because they stood by while he was being insulted. But Nandishwar is upset now at also those in the assembly. Just like Daksha was upset, Nandishwar is also upset. And we had a discussion now that Asat Sangh has this influence, has this impact, that just like nobody can stay clean in a muddy place. So if a person is associating with those who are materialistic or offensive, then whether they like it or not, they will also be contaminated. So we see that it takes somebody of the stature of Lord Shiva to be not affected by it, Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. But we see even exalted personalities like Nandishvara and Bhrigu, who is the leader of the Brahmans, they are affected by it. So Daksha is gone. Lord Shiva is, at this point he's sitting, he's not saying anything. But for what he has created, that is now agitating the consciousness of the entire assembly. That is a satsanga. That whether you like it or not, you get sucked into the negativity that is being created. Okay, so we'll resume our discussion from verse 21, 4 to 21. Ya etan martayam udeshya bhagvate pratidruhi druyatyagya prathak drishtis tattvato vimukh bhaved. Anyone who has accepted Daksha as the most important personality and neglected Lord Shiva because of envy is less intelligent. And because of visualizing and duality, will be bereft of transcendental knowledge. So beginning from this verse 21, 3 verses will explain the curses of Nandishwar on Daksha and his followers. So in this verse, Nandishwar states that he who is etad martyam. So the gross body is known as martyam because it is destined to die, or it is already dead, because gross body is gross. So he says anybody who is associating with this body, which is subject to death, the consequences of it is that such a person will hate Shiva and become ignorant. So what kind of ignorance will manifest in such a person? So that is further explained by Nandishwara. He says that such a person will see in terms of different living beings. So he will see in terms of my body, my children, my wife, not my wife, not my body, not my children. So he will make this distinction between living beings based on the body. Secondly, he will be tattvato vimukha bhavet, that he will be opposed to the Lord. Tattvato means truth. So one can understand both ways, and that such a person will be opposed to the conclusions of the Vedas, tattvas, and because the Lord is the absolute truth, such a person will be opposed to the Lord. So this is the first curse, that the followers of Daksha will be opposed to the Lord and will be invested into the material conception. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Pad says that Nandishwar should have directed his anger at Daksha only. However, inflamed with passion, he curses those who have a like mentality. Now, it does not mean that he's not cursing Daksha, because he's saying that, that anyone who has accepted Daksha as the important personality, which means those who are like-minded. So Daksha and those who have this conception, which is Tattvato Vimukh Bhavit, that which is being opposed to the personality of Godhead, Etat Martyam, being identifying with the body, they will be bereft of transcendental knowledge. Srila Prabhupada says that the first curse by Nandishwar was that anyone supporting Daksha was foolishly identifying himself with the body, and therefore, because Daksha had no transcendental knowledge, supporting him would derive one of transcendental knowledge. So we see a little bit of circularity over here. And we'll see that later in the curses of Bhrigumani also, that the cause and the effect seem to be linked even without the curse. So as Srila Prabhupada is explaining, that even if Nandishwar had not cursed, the point is that if somebody was supporting Daksha and foolishly who was in this mode of being proud of his physical appellations, his physical titles, his physical prowess, he was proud of that. That person is bereft of transcendental knowledge. So even without the curse of Nandishwar, that would be true, because that is a basic understanding, right? That a person who is identifying with the body is bereft of spiritual knowledge. What Nandishwar is simply doing is formally stating it, and maybe he is specifically targeting it to Daksha and his followers. We'll see the same thing in the cursing of Bhrigumani also, that they're essentially stating facts that predate the cursing. So it's not that because of the curse of Nandishwar, the followers of Daksha began to identify themselves with the body and became bereft of transcendental knowledge. That was already there. Even in Daksha, the fact that he's insulting Lord Shiva, that is already there. However, the curse by Nandishwar is formalizing it, that this is what is going to happen. So Prabhupada continues that Nandishwar said, Nandishwar said, identified himself with the body like other materialistic persons and was trying to derive all kinds of facilities in relationship with the body. He had excessive attachment for the body and in relation to the body with wife, children, home, and other such things, which are different from the soul. Therefore, Nandishwar's curse was that anyone who supported Daksha would be bereft of transcendental knowledge of the soul and thus be derived of the knowledge of the Supreme Personality of God. Because Atmagyan is a step towards Bhagavad Gyan. That only when you accept yourself as soul can you really understand the position of the Lord as the Supreme Soul. If you consider yourself as body, then even if you have a conception of God, it will not be an accurate conception. So this is pointing to the mentalities of followers of Daksha. So followers of Daksha is used for as a placeholder for materialistically minded people, because Daksha is materialistic, his followers are materialistic. So this is essentially describing materialistic minded people, that they will be bereft of Atma Gyan and Bhagavad Gyan. So this is the first curse. Okay, so move on to verse 22. Griheshu Kulta Dharmeshu Sattugramya Sukhechaya Karma Tantram Vitnute Vedavad Vipannadhi. Pretentiously religious householder life, in which one is attracted to material happiness and thus also attracted to the superficial explanation of the Vedas, robs one of all intelligence and attaches one to fruitive activities as all in all. So this verse describes the nature of the people that are mentioned in the previous verse. So they're graheshu kuta dharmeshu. So graheshu means grahastha or gramedi, and dharmeshu is religiosity. Kuta means that pretentiously. Pretentiously means for show, for out of pride, for material benefits. So graheshu kuta dharmeshu gramya sukha ichchaya. Right? Then if one is doing it kuta, then why is one doing it at all? Gramya sukha ichchaya, with a desire for material happiness. So what will they do? Karma tantram. They will perform fruitive activities that are given in Vedavad. So Vedavad is the Karma Kanda part of the Vedas. Krishna speaks about it in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, when he says Yamimam Pushpitam Vacham Pravadanti Avapashyata Vedavadata Partha. So he says that those who are attracted to the flowery languages of the Vedas, and Vedavad are the so-called followers. So Nandishwar said that why are they Vedavad? Vipannadi, because they have lost their intelligence. So this is not a curse per se. This is simply an elaboration on the previous curse, that such materialistic minded people will follow the Vedas externally only for material benefits. So Prabhupada says that, for example, in the Vedas it is said that one who observes the Chaturmasya vow will attain eternal happiness in the heavenly kingdom. In Bhagavad Gita it is said that this flowery language of the Vedas mostly attracts people who identify with the body. So this is 242. Yeah, 242, right? Yeah. Yamimam Pushpatam Vacham. To them, such happiness as that of the heavenly kingdoms is everything. They do not know that beyond that is the spiritual kingdom or the kingdom of God, and they have no knowledge that one can go there. So this is the vipannati. This is their lack of intelligence. So it's not that they are mentally retarded or they don't have all their facilities working. It is directed at the wrong place. So whatever intelligence they have, and they may be very intelligent, but they're directing it towards mental happiness, towards physical happiness, material happiness. And either they don't know or they don't care to know about the spiritual world. So they are bereft of transcendental knowledge. So such people, Prabhupada says, are very careful in observing the rules and regulations of household life in order to be promoted in the next life to the moon or other heavenly planets. It is stated here that such persons are attracted to gramya sukha, which means material happiness, without knowledge of eternal blissful spiritual life. So you see here that in this verse it seems that people with such defective mentality are also householders. So Nandishwar says, Graheshu Kuta Dharmeshu. And the reason is that so it's not that all the householders have such a mentality, but it is that people with this mentality are generally householders, because part of all this mentality of being attracted to the body gramya sukha, is actually achieved only in the grahastha ashram. You have a wife, you have a children, you are allowed to enjoy material things. So such people will generally take to grahastha life. But again, it does not mean that everybody who is a grahastha is a kuta dharmeshu, right? There are the grahamedis and there are the grahasthas also. Verse 23. Buddhya para vidyaniya vismartatmagati pashuhu stri kama swastva atitaram daksho bast mukho chirat. Daksha has accepted the body as all in all. Therefore, since he has forgotten the Vishnu path or Vishnu Gati and is attached to sex life only, within a short time, he will have the face of a goat. So previously, Nandishwar was cursing the followers of Daksha, or those who had a mentality similar to Daksha. Now he is specifically cursing Daksha. So the previous verse, as I mentioned, was not a curse. It was spoken more to establish a reference point, that a materialistic householder becomes engrossed in pious enjoyment. Here he says that those people that I spoke about in the previous verse, they're pretty fallen. But Daksha, he's even more fallen, because he's attached to sex life only. He has accepted his body as all in all. So how does Nandishwar describe Daksha? So he calls him Pashu. So Pashu is also looking at it from a future perspective, that he will become that he will be like an animal. And Nandishwar is saying it is rightly so. Why? Because Vismarta Atma Gati, that he has forgotten the knowledge of self-realization because of Buddhya para abhidya yanya. Because by his buddhya, by his intelligence, he is accepting his body as self. And the result of this is atitaram stri kama. Ati means intense. Stri kama is desire to associate with the opposite sex, desire to have sex. Atitaram stri kama. So Nandishwar is saying that Daksha is already like this, not because of my curse. He's saying he's already like this, that he has forgotten the knowledge of self-realization because he has an intelligence that tells him to accept the material body as the self. And because he's accepting his body as his self, he has developed excessive attachment to sex. So now Nandishwar is uttering the curse that because he's like an animal, basta mukha achirata, he will soon get the head of an animal. So Nandishwar is saying that makes sense. He's already like an animal. He does not understand, because in the human form of life, you get this body for the purpose of self-realization. And Daksha is Vismartatma Gati. In the human form of life, you get the intelligence to be resolute in Krishna consciousness. But Daksha is Buddhya Para Abhidya Yanya. He is using his intelligence to accept the body as the self. And just like an animal has uncontrolled desires, then Daksha is also Atitaram Sri Kama. He has also got uncontrollable attachment to sex. So might as well complete this picture of Daksha and give him the head of a goat. Bastumukha Achirata. So the Acharyas also say, and this is a little bit of in a little bit of humor, that Nandishwar, he himself is a bull. So one might say that Nandishwar is also he's Pashu, and he's deriding Daksha to be like an animal. But the difference is that he is not saying that because Daksha is an animal, he is Vismritatmagati Buddhya Para Abhidanyaya Atitaram Sti Kama. He's not saying that. He's saying it the other way around. That because he is Vismritatmagati, he is Buddhya Para Abhidanyaya, he should be considered like an animal. Even amongst the animal, Nandishwar, he picks an animal that is generally condemned amongst animals. So many times we see animals are glorified, right? You say that he's strong like a lion, or he's loyal like a dog, or he has a memory like an elephant, or he's peaceful like a cow, or graceful like a gazelle, or he has beautiful eyes like a fish. These are qualities in animals that are glorified. But you will not see anybody being glorified with respect to a goat. That this person is great because something like a goat. So the goats are generally considered to be like the Shudras of the animals. I mean, of course, there are no varnas amongst the animals. But if there was, then the goats are considered to be like the Shudra. In the Markandeya Puran, it is recommended that you should not eat meat. But if for some reason you have to eat meat, then eat goat's meat. And from an empirical perspective, people are very careful not to let goats into their field. They're not so concerned about deer or cows coming because of the nature with which the goat feeds itself. So goats are one of the few animals that uproots what it eats. Like the cows, they will only eat off the top, but they will leave the roots of the grass and the plants and some leaves so that the plants can regrow. But the goats will actually pull out the roots, and they will destroy the plants completely. So because of these bad qualities in a goat, Nandishwar is saying that it makes sense for Daksha, who has all these bad qualities, to get the face like a goat. So in verse 21, Nandishwar gave the first curse that anybody who supported Daksha and neglected Lord Shiva will see in terms of bodily difference and become opposed to Lord Vishnu. Then in 23, he gave two curses. The first curse is, let Daksha, who has forgotten the spiritual goal because of accepting the body as the self, desiring women excessively, be like an animal. And the second curse is that Daksha will soon get a goat head, which we will see later on, how he gets a goat head. Okay, verse 24. Vidya buddhir avidyayam karmamam avyayam saujadaha samsarantvyaha ye chamum anusarvavamaninam. Those who have become as dull as matter by cultivating materialistic education and intelligence are nascently involved in fruitive activities. Such men have purposely insulted Lord Shiva. May they continue in the cycle of repeated birth and death. Srila Prabhupada says that the three curses mentioned above are sufficient to make one as dull as stone, void of spiritual knowledge, and preoccupied with materialistic education, which is nations. After these curses, Nandishwar then cursed the Brahmins to continue in the cycle of birth and death because of their supporting Daksha in blaspheming Lord Shiva. So there was no active support by the Brahmins of Daksha, but the lack of opposition is also considered to be passive support. And that is why Nandishwar is now cursing the Brahmins. Vishwanath Chakravarti, he explains another aspect of this verse, and he says that Nandishwar is saying that the three curses that I have spoken, they are suitable because avidyayam, because that person takes ignorance, karma mayam, in the form of karma, vidya buddhi, as knowledge. So essentially the person is taking ignorance as knowledge. So ignorance, specifically karma maya, in the form of karma, which means the person is accepting the superiority of karma kand. So that's why he says such a person is asaujada, that such a person is foolish. Then Nandishwar says, yanum daksha, let those who follow Daksha, sarvava amaniman, who has insulted Shiva. So Vishnu Chakravarti says that it's not that Nandishwar is saying that those who followed Daksha have insulted Shiva. The Sarvava Amaniman is actually qualifying Daksha. So it's like, let those who follow the king who wears a crown. So it's not that the people who are following wear a crown, but they're following the king who wears a crown. So Sarvava Amaniman is directed to Daksha. So Yeanum Daksha, so let those who follow Daksha, that Daksha who has insulted Lord Shiva, samsarantu iha, take repeated birth and death. So subtle difference, not much. The curse is essentially described the same, both by Prabhupada and Vishnu Chakravarti, that though the followers of Daksha are destined to take repeated birth and death. So essentially, this is Nandishwar's criticism of Karma Kand Yagya, because the Yagya that Daksha had arranged was a Karma Kand Yagya. And because the people who had come there were prominently interested in these kinds of things. So the Nandishwar is cursing that mentality. And he may not be specifically cursing people in the assembly, saying that you Bhrigu is being cursed or you sun god are being cursed. But he's saying that the people who have this mentality are cursed to take repeated birth and death. And again, this curse is a statement of fact. Because even without Nandishwar's curse, people with this mentality are destined to take birth and repeated birth and death. And now, in the following 2.5 verses, he will continue to curse the Brahman followers of Daksha. Okay. Verse 25. Gira Shrutaya Pushpinya Madhu Gandhena Bhurina Matna Chon Mathita Manaha Samohayantu Haradvishaha. May those who are envious of Lord Shiva, attracted by the flowery language of the enchanting Vedic promises, and who have thus become dull, always remain attached to fruitive activities. So this is the first curse to the Brahmins, that because they have materialistic mentality like Daksha, attached to Karma Kanda, they will always remain so attached. So why is this a curse? The curse aspect over here is a little subtle, because as I mentioned before, that even without Nandishwar saying this, this is a matter of fact. The reason it is considered as a curse is because when Vedas offered this Karmakand, they offer it with the hope that when people take to Karmakand, they will get purified by it. And then they will move to higher platforms, whether it is Jnana or Astang or Bhakti, not because the Vedas want them to stay at the platform of Karmakand. What Nandishwar is cursing is that the followers of Daksha will simply stay at this platform, that they will not be able to make the advancements to the higher platform. So the real benediction of the Vedas is when one takes to Karmakand and moves to Jnana or Astanga or Bhakti. But the Nandeshwar says that because they are unmitha atmana, that they are done minded, and because of that, samuhyantu, they will always be materially attached. Okay, next verse 26. Sarva bhaksha dvija vrityai drita vidya tapo vrataha vita dehe indriya rama yachaka vicharantvaya. These Brahmins take to education, austerity and vows only for the purpose of maintaining the body. They shall be devoid of discriminating between what to eat and what not to eat. They will acquire money begging from door to door, simply for the satisfaction of the body. So this verse has 4 more curses by Nandishwar. So he says, Vritya Vrata Vidya Tapo Vrata, that they have taken vows of knowledge and austerity for maintaining the body. So essentially, one takes to vows of knowledge and performs austerity to receive spiritual enlightenment. But the followers of Daksha, they will do it only to maintain their material body. Then what else? Sarva bhaksha dvija, that they will eat without discrimination. So a Brahmin, they are supposed to be mitabhuka, which means they should eat very less, and they should only eat under conducive circumstances. They should eat food that has been properly offered, that is in the mode of goodness, and at the right time, after proper cleanliness, then they should eat. But because these Brahmins will be so attached to maintaining the body, Sarva Bhaksha Dvija, that Sarva Bhaksha, that whatever they get, they will eat. So in Mahabharata, there is the incident that when Drupad was defeated by Dronacharya with the help of the Pandavas, and Dronacharya had taken away half the kingdom of Drupad, then Drupad felt very, very humiliated, and he wanted to extract revenge from Dronacharya. So knowing that he was not a match for him in military, and knowing that Dronacharya was also a powerful Brahman, what Drupad did was that he went around looking for a Brahman who can help him in his revenge against Drupad, against Dronacharya. And then he went and he asked many Brahmins, and all the Brahmins refused, saying that this kind of thing is tamasic, that you are asking us to conduct yagyas or cast a curse. This is all tamasic. You get away from here. And he finally came upon, heard about brothers who were Brahmins and also very expert in yagyas. So one of the brothers was considered to be far superior in terms of his knowledge and expertise in chanting Vedic mantras, etc. So he approached that brother and he said, I need you to help me take revenge from Dronacharya. The brother says, I'm a Brahman. I don't do these kinds of things. And you should also learn to forgive and forget. And Drupad then goes on and on how he's not able to live. His body is burning with fire of this and that. And then finally the Brahman becomes compassionate at him. And he says, I can't do it. Or he says, I won't do it, but my brother will do it. And he said, how can you be sure your brother will do it? And he said, once we were walking down in the forest, and there was a fruit that had fallen on the ground. And then I noticed that my brother picked it up and ate it. He did not determine where the fruit had come from, what its origin was, whether it was an appropriate time to eat the fruit. So I could see by that my brother is materially greedy. So since you're a king and you're offering all this reward, I think my brother will be attracted. And he was right. So then Drupad approaches the brother and he says, I will give you all this gold and etc. And the brother agrees to do the yagya. Of course, because he's the elder brother, he actually, he did not have that potency to do the yagya. But because he was the elder brother, he orders his younger brother to do it. So the younger brother does it on the order of the elder brother. And then it is from this yagya that Drishtadumna and Draupadi, they appear. So the point that is made here is Sarva Bhaksha Dvija. This is the quality of a fallen Brahman, second curse. Then Vita Dehe Indriya Rama, that such a person will enjoy wealth, body, and senses. And final, Yachaka Vicharantvaya, that they will wander about the earth as beggars. Now, there are the Paribragacharyas who also wander about the earth as beggars. But they wander about as beggars for a different reason. Then under the guise of begging, they impart spiritual knowledge to those who are unfortunate enough to not come in contact with devotees. But these so-called Brahmins will actually be beggars. That they will actually wander about the earth and beg for material wealth. So Prabhupada says that the third curse inflicted by Nandishwara on the Brahmins who supported Daksha is completely functioning in the age of Kali. The so-called Brahmanas are no longer interested in understanding the nature of the Supreme Brahman. So these curses by Nandishvara, we can actually see around us in the current day and age. That the so-called Brahmins, Prabhupada says, that they're not Brahmas in the true sense, but through samskars or by birth they have become Brahmins. But essentially, they have this mentality. So they're completely invested in the material conception with no knowledge or even an interest in understanding the transcendental. So such Brahmins, they have what is known as a Dhenukasur attitude. So Dhenukasur had this thing going on that in the Talban forest, he did not eat the tal fruits himself, but he did not allow anybody else to eat also. So similarly, these cursed Brahmins, they will not study the Vedas themselves, nor will they allow others to study Vedas also. Because then they're scared that other people will read the Vedas and then they will be able to challenge them or will be able to see them for what they are. So in a lecture on this, Radhanath Swami, he states that because in the Vedic society, the Brahmanas became so weak, that is why you see so many Hindus became Muslims and are still becoming Muslims and Christians. Because the Brahmins have lost their ability to become the lodestar, the guiding star. They lost their ability to become the anchors. So when people are approached by other religions, they don't have anything to ratify it against, validate that this person says this and this. For instance, I remember many years ago, one of the persons coming in our Bhakti Viksha, he had been coming for a while in the sense at least for a couple of years, and he was making good progress. He was studying the Gita, chanting, and through some confluence of events, he became interested in Christianity. And then he would go to the Christian, whatever the Christian namhats, and there they would say that, you will reach a point where you will walk hand in hand with God, or we will show you God face to face. And then this person would come back to us, and then he would say, can you show me Krishna face to face? Can I walk hand in hand with Krishna? Now, fortunately, we had the teachings of Srila Prabhupada. And so we were able to explain things to him, that what is the position of the soul. We are not supposed to walk hand in hand with Krishna. We are supposed to serve him. So we were able to explain things to him. Now, and unfortunately, the person, he left everything. He left Vaishnavism and Christianity, everything, and he became something else, which is, I guess, his own whatever thing that he was going through. But I remember at the time when he was asking all these questions, and I would basically ask the questions to Guru Maharaj, and he would quote Prabhupada's verses, quotes from the Gita, and I could see that it had a profound influence on this person. That it's not that I was being dogmatic, that don't question religion, don't do this, just follow blindly. No, we were able to explain the position, and and he was playing this role of ping pong, that he would ask me questions, get answers, give the answers over there, and then he would get their explanations, come back over here, and then I could see that he was very much impressed by the depth of the philosophy that Prabhupada presented. And that's what Radhanath Swami is lamenting, that the mainstream Brahmins, they don't have that anymore. Typically, if you go to the Brahmins, they'll guide you towards Karmakanda. that what's your problem? You need this? Okay, I can do this yajna for you, or I can chant this mantra for you, or they will tell you some ritual to do. Generally, it involves paying the money, but that's about it. They won't, they will not guide you in terms of the ultimate purpose of life, the position of Krishna. So Prabhupada in the purport writes that Mahaprabhu condemned this principle very strongly. What's the principle of Smarta Brahmans? During his conversation with Ramananda Rai, he said that regardless of whether a person is born in a Brahman family or a Shudra family, regardless of whether he's a householder or a sannyasi, if he knows the science of Krishna, he must be a spiritual master. So this is the famous verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Kiva Viprakiva Nyasi, Shudra Kena Naya, Ye Krishna Tattva Veta Se Guru Hoya. That Kiva Vipro Kiva Nyasi, that whether a person is a Vipra Brahman or a sannyasi or Shudra Kena Naya, or the person is a Shudra. Yene Krishna Tattva Veta. If the person knows the science of Krishna consciousness, say Guru Hoya. That person is a spiritual master. So Prabhupada is making this point that one is not a Brahman because of anything else but the fact that the person is Krishna Tattvaveta, that the person knows the science of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada writes that Mahaprabhu had so many so-called Shudra disciples, Haridas Thakur and Ramananda Rai. Even the Goswamis, who were principal students of Lord Chaitanya, were also ostracized from Brahman society. And this is, of course, Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, because they were serving Nawab Hussain Shah as ministers. They were sitting in his court and intimately associating with the Muslims. They were considered like Muslims. And Mahaprabhu, he accepted them not only as Brahmins, but Prabhupada said made them first class Vaishnavas. Okay, so I'll give a summary of the curses by Nandi and then pause for any discussion. So 6 curses. So Nandi in all casts 9 curses, and 3 curses we saw earlier. In this set of from 24 to 26, there are 6 curses. That let those who follow Daksha take repeated birth and death. Let those who hate Shiva and whose minds are agitated by karma become completely attached to karma. Those people will take vows only for maintaining their bodies. They will lose discrimination about what should and should not be eaten. They will enjoy wealth, body, and senses, and they will wander about as beggars. Okay. Now we see from the next verse, we'll see the curses by Bhrigu. So I'll pause here and see if we have any thoughts or any comments so far.
Hare Krishna, Prajit. Prajit, this begging from door to door, does that mean like they will like be working under somebody? Is that like they will not have their own, they'll be like dependent on working for somebody else is kind of like begging?
Not. So in this verse, it's not used in that context. So Srila Prabhupada would say that when you accept service from somebody, then as you're pointing out, you are in that position of begging. Prabhupada would give the example that when you're in a so-called high level position. So essentially, Prabhupada said you would go to the person and say, "My dear sir, I want to become your servant. I have all these qualifications to become your servant. In return of a little bit of money, I will become your servant." So person is essentially begging for a position. So in a wider sense, yes, what you're saying is true. In the context of this verse, it is specifically applied to Brahmins who make a living by begging door to door. We don't see that, at least you don't see that much in cities now. But is you see that a lot in India, at least you see a lot of it in rural India. And even in cities, I know when I was growing up, um, um, I was right in the heart of Delhi, in the most, it was a pretty metro area, but it wasn't uncommon for us, especially on the weekends, for us to have 3 or 4 so-called sadhus show up, and they would have all these different kinds of tilaks and all these things smeared on the body. And essentially, they would just come and beg for anything you give them. You can give them money, you can give them food, you can give them milk. So we used to keep something aside, and people would come and we would give them something. So this is referring more to those kind of Brahmins who essentially made a living just going door to door and begging for food just to maintain their body.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Nandishwar, even he is a great follower or devotee of Lord Shiva. And in one of these classes, he was reminding them that they are not following Vishnu Pada or Vishnu Gati. I mean, we know that Vishnu is the supreme person of Godhead.
So I'm trying to follow. Your voice was breaking up. You're saying that Nandishwar knew that the followers of Daksha were not followers of Lord Vishnu.
No. What I'm saying is, even though Nandishwar is a great devotee of Lord Shiva, or follower of Lord Shiva, he is showing here that he knows, or maybe he knows that Vishnu is the supreme person of Godhead.
Correct.
He knows the position of Lord Vishnu.
Correct. And the point that's made is that the two are not exclusive, right? One can be a follower of Lord Shiva and a follower of Lord Vishnu at the same time, as long as one is clear about the position of Lord Shiva. And for instance, Krishna's guru, Sandipani Muni, right? His worshipful deity is Lord Shiva, the great follower of Lord Shiva. But also, he was obviously in an exalted position that Krishna accepted him as his teacher. So he had a clear understanding of the position of Lord Vishnu as the supreme, and he was following him under the shelter of Lord Shiva. So the two are not exclusive. It's only when the persons have this mentality that Lord Shiva is the supreme personality of Godhead, then it becomes Vipreet, then it becomes opposing.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's continue. I think we should be able to finish this chapter today. Verse 27. Tasyevam vadata shapam shrutva dvija kulaya vai bhrigu pratya srajak chapam brahmadanda duratyayam. When all the hereditary Brahmins were thus cursed by Nandishwar, the sage Bhrigu, as a reaction, condemned the followers of Lord Shiva with his very strong Brahmanical curse. So we will see that Bhrigu will utter 5 curses. And from verses 27 to 32. So preview of the curses, and we'll go through the verses, of course. So Bhrigu will say that the followers of Lord Shiva will become heretics and obstacles to the genuine scriptures. They will be unclean, foolish. They will wear matted locks and adorn their body with ashes and bones. They will worship intoxication as if it were a deity. They will take shelter of heretical views. and opposed to the real Vedas, they will tread the wrong path. So you will see that there is a certain similarity in the curses. That Nandishwar is saying that those who are followers of Daksha, they are opposed to the Vedas. They will become opposed to the Vedas. And Bhrigu is saying those who are followers of Shiva will become opposed to the Vedas. Right? The difference is that Nandishwar is acknowledging that those who are followers of Daksha will be predominantly in the mode of goodness, that they will be pious. Bhrigu is saying they will be predominantly in the mode of ignorance, that they will worship intoxication as a deity, they will dress in this way. And Prabhupada makes this point that does not make any difference. Whether you're a little wrong or lot wrong, you're wrong. So whether you're in mode of goodness or ignorance, you're still in the modes. The point also is made that this cursing and counter cursing, it also shows that both Bhrigu and Nandishwar, they were themselves contaminated by the modes. Otherwise, they would have acted like Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva was at the center of it. He was the one who was first cursed. Lord Shiva does not utter any curse, because the point that is made is that Vaishnavas, it is not in their nature to curse, and the Vaishnavas are also not subject to curses because of the fact that they are under the protection of Krishna. So 2 verses in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna makes this point himself. 5.7, Krishna says that one who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. So dear to everyone means nobody will curse him, and everyone is dear to him means that he will not curse anyone. So Krishna says that is the quality of a Vaishnava. And then in 12:15, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, he by whom no one is put into difficulty and who's not disturbed by anyone, who's equiposed in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety, is very dear to me. So he by whom no one is put into difficulty means that person does not curse anybody, and who is not disturbed by anyone means that no curse acts upon him. So that's the nature of Vaishnava. So Lord Shiva was cursed by Daksha, but Lord Shiva does not care about it. Similarly, we see Nanda Maharaj was cursed by, not Nanda Maharaj, sorry. Narad Muni was cursed by Daksha. Narad Muni says, thank you very much. Great. Right? We see that Krishna himself was cursed by Krishna was cursed by
Gandhari.
By Gandhari. Thank you. He was cursed by Gandhari, and Krishna says, okay, that's good. I will use this curse to relieve the burden of this dynasty of mine that has grown. So Vaishnavas, they don't curse because it is not in the nature to curse. And this is also one of the things that is recommended, even for sadhakas like us. We are trying to be devotees, but we should never take this position of using our spiritual bank balance or of using our relative proximity to Krishna to harm other people. And that is very, very detrimental. At one point, in a lecture, I think Radha Govind Maharaj, not 100% sure who said it, but said that cursing is in the mode of ignorance. It is tamasic. So even if the other person is cursing you, let that person be in the mode that they want to be, you don't have to degrade yourself to be in that mode. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that the word Duratyaya is particularly used in reference to Brahman, to Brahmadanda, or curse by a Brahman. A curse by a Brahman is very strong. Therefore, it is called Duratyaya, or insurmountable. The Lord states in Bhagavad Gita, the stringent law of natures are insurmountable. Right? This is says in chapter 7, verse 14. That these stringent laws are insurmountable. So essentially, Prabhupada is making this point that this cursing is actually one of the stringent laws of nature, just like karma. It is a actually cursing comes as a part of karma. That if you have enough pious credits, you can curse. You lose those credits, just like if you enjoy the credits, you lose the credits. Cursing is also a way that you lose the credits. That's why some people are able to curse a lot, or are able to curse things that have tremendous influence. Other people are not. If all curses had influence, then everybody would, then the world would be empty. But not everybody has that karmic bank balance. But because they're essentially run by how much pious credits you have, that's why sages, they very rarely curse, because they realize that not only is cursing tamasic, but it also exhausts them of their pious credits. But when the curses are uttered, then they are like the law of karma. In a material sense, they are stringent. Prabhupada continues, but Bhagavad Gita also says that curses or benedictions of the material world are, after all, material creations. So I was not able to find a verse that says this exactly, but in the purport of 721, Srila Prabhupada makes this point. And so one can understand that Prabhupada is referring to 721 in this statement. Then he continues, the Chaitanya Charitamrita confirms that which is accepted in the material world to be a benediction and that which is taken to be a curse are both on the same platform. To get out of this material contamination, one has to take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as recommended in Bhagavad Gita 7:14, Mam eva ye prapadyante maya metam taranti. So Sri Prabhupada is making this point that both are the same, that curses and benedictions, they are the same, because just like pious activities and impious activities are also the same. That essentially they're both binding you to the material world. So the reason Prabhupada makes this point is that all these curses are useless from the perspective of a devotee. What the devotee should do is to extract the lesson from this. What is the lesson? Right? The lesson over here is that of asatya sanga tyag. That's the primary lesson, and also the insidious effect of Vaishnava Prad. That are the lessons that the person should extract from this pastime. Okay, verse 28. Bhavrata ye cha ta samano vrataha pashande shaste bhavantu satshastra paripanthanaha. One who takes a vow to satisfy Lord Shiva or who follows his principles will certainly become an atheist and be diverted from transcendental scriptural injunctions. So Prabhupada says that it is sometimes seen that devotees of Lord Shiva imitate the characteristics of Lord Shiva. For example, Lord Shiva drank an ocean of poison So some followers of Lord Shiva imitate him and try to take intoxicants like ganja, marijuana. Here the curse is that if someone follows such principles, he becomes an infidel and turns against the principles of Vedic regulation. It is said that such devotees of Lord Shiva will be Satcha Shastra Paripanthana, or opposed to the conclusions of Shastra or scriptures. This is confirmed in Padma Puran. Lord Shiva was ordered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead to preach the impersonal or Mayavadi philosophy. So Prabhupada is explaining that because of this curse, or as a way of using this curse to serve Krishna, Lord Shiva took on this service of appearing as Sripad Shankaracharya to preach Mayavadi philosophies. And essentially he was doing what is cursed by Bhrigu Muni over here, that he is using the scriptures to mislead the people, that misinterpreting the scriptures to mislead the persons. So in the Padma Puran, Lord Vishnu himself says to Shambhu, he says that I continuously propitiate you to secure from you this boon, that in the beginning of Kali Yuga, you appear in the human beings through your own partial expansion. And please divert people's awareness away from me by your own invented scriptures and conceal me, so that the creation will be perpetuated on and on. And in the Vara Puran, similar statement is spoken by Lord Vishnu to Lord Shiva, where Lord Vishnu says, I am quickly creating these nations that will bewilder the people who are Rudras, causing illusory scriptures to be written, establish untruths and falsehoods, advertise yourself and hide me. And in Devi Bhagavad Puran, it is mentioned that whatever scriptures oppose the Shrutis and Smritis are surely tamasic. And then it goes on to say that the such Vaman, Kapal, Bhairav, Agmas, and those that are propounded by Lord Shiva are in that category. So the curse of Bhrigu makes Lord Shiva and those who follow him Sat Shastra Paripanthana, opposed to the conclusions of the scriptures. So why did Lord Shiva preach Mayavadi philosophy? One understanding that is given is to reintroduce the Vedas after the Buddhists had completely negated it. So instead of introducing it in its pristine form, which would not have been accepted, it was introduced in a form that bewildered the Buddhists. Then the Mayavadi philosophy is also there for attracting those who are in the lower modes. So there are those who cannot take to the more transcendental aspects of the Vedas. That's the Vedas say you become a servant of Krishna or a servant of Krishna, and the person has so much of ego that he says, how can I be a servant of everyone? That also eternally. And not only servant, but a servant of a servant, n times removed. Not that doesn't work for me. And then a follower of Lord Shiva says, you're absolutely right. Actually, I have something that works for you. And which is that you are God. Or says, yes, I always thought I was God. Thank you for telling me. What should I do? And then the person takes to this path. So this is the casting the wide net philosophy of the Vedas. They have something for everyone. Third aspect that is also introduced here, it is the Vara Purana, in the Padma Puran, it says that in order to perpetuate the cycles of creation there. Prabhupada says that in the Shiv Puran, it is stated that Lord Shiva said to Parvati that in Kali Yuga, in the body of a Brahman, he would preach the Mayavad philosophy. Thus, it is generally found that the worship of Lord Shiva are Mayavadi philosophers or Mayavadi followers. Lord Shiva himself says, Mayavadam asat shastram. Okay, so let's continue till verse 29. Nashta saucha mudhiyo jata bahisma siti dharinaha vishantu shiva dikshayam yatra devam surasavam. Those who vow to worship Lord Shiva are so foolish that they imitate him by keeping long hair on their heads. When initiated into the worship of Lord Shiva, they prefer to live on wine, flesh, and other such things. So, yatra devam surasavam, that they will worship liquor as if it is a deity. Now, liquor does have a deity. Her name is Varuni, and she appeared during the churning of the ocean. But here it is mentioned more from the perspective of addiction. That those who are addicted to liquor, if they do not get liquor, they actually suffer terribly in separation. So that's the nature of a devotee to the worshipful Lord. That when they're separated from the worshipful Lord, they suffer tremendously. When will I associate with my Lord again? So that is the curse, that these people will become addicted to liquor. And essentially this curse of Bhrigu becomes a boon for Lord Shiva because it helped him fulfill the service that was given to him by Lord Vishnu, the Sat Shastra Paripantana, right? To basically give the incorrect conclusions of the scriptures. So Prabhupada says, indulging in wine and meat, keeping long hair and on one's head, not bathing daily, and smoking ganja marijuana are some of the habits which are accepted by foolish creatures who do not have regulated lives. By such behavior, one becomes devoid of transcendental knowledge. In the initiation into the Shiva mantra, there is the Mudrika Ashtak, in which it is sometimes recommended that one makes his sitting place on the vagina and thus desire nirvana or dissolution of existence. In that process of worship, wine is needed, or sometimes in place of wine, palm tree juice, which is converted into an intoxicant. This is also offered according to Shivagma, a scripture on the method of worshipping Lord Shiva. So this is all tantric process where the initiation is a combination of sex and intoxication, and there is some kind of an explanation that is given. Okay, carrying on, verse 30. Brahmacha brahmanam seva yadyuyam parinedataha setum viharanam pumsham ataha pashandamashitaha. Bhrigu continued, since you blaspheme the Vedas and the Brahmins, who are followers of the Vedic principles, it is understood that you have already taken shelter of the doctrine of atheism. So, another meaning of Brahma is Vedas. So, Brahma has in many Sanskrit words, many meanings. One of the meaning of Brahma is that which causes to increase. Here, it is used to point to Vedas. So, Bhrigu here is saying that it is not my curse that is making you atheists, but it is your own activities that is making you atheists. Because you criticize the Vedas and the Brahmins, means that you're rejecting the word and those who keep the word. You have already taken shelter of heretic views. And these curses are for future generations also. So the point that is made over here is that these are powerful people, Bhrigu and Nandishwar, who have the ability to affect the course of future, many future generations. So Daksha had cursed Lord Shiva, and then he had left the assembly. But even though he had left the assembly, he had still remained there as a bad example. Following his bad example, Nandishwar cursed. Following the example of Nandishwar, Bhrigu cursed. So it is said that one gets to these exalted positions because of their ability to control their senses. But when such people are not able to do it, the ramifications are far and wide. Radhanath Maharaj in a lecture on this gives an example of it, that in the US, and this was, I guess, when he was growing up, in the US, abortion was illegal at the time. But then there was one woman who sued for the right to abort her child. This is the famous Roe versus Wade. So the name of the woman was Roe, and the attorney that was fighting from the side of the US government was Wade. And the case went all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, of course, by the time the case was decided, the woman already had a child. So she was not really affected by it, but she won the case. So even though she was not affected by it, the future generations were, because then they could establish legal precedent. The Roe versus Wade, it allowed abortion, and then abortion became legal. So Radha Maharaj said, this is what happens. Now, of course, Roe wasn't like a great personality, but the decision was by the Supreme Court. So that was a great. Supreme Court is the premier legal institution. So that established precedents. So the point that is made is, when personalities are in this position of power or influence, they have to be very, very careful about their conduct. Prabhupada says that the Vedas are the mother for such instruction, and the Brahmanas, or the person in the knowledge, are the father. Thus, if one blasphemes the Vedas and the Brahmanas, then one naturally goes down to the status of atheism. So Prabhupada says atheism means Nastik. So Nastik means that a person who has no shelter. But just like when a child rejects the mother and the father, the person has no shelter. So when the person rejects the Vedas and the Brahmins, the person becomes Nastik. Okay, next verse. Okay, I may not be able to compare. Let's see. Verse 31. Esha eva hi lokanam shiva pantah sanatanaha yam purve chanu sanatan shur yat pramanam janardhanaha. The Vedas give the eternal regulative principles for auspicious advancement in human civilization, which have been rigidly followed in the past. The strong evidence of this principle is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is called Janardhan, the well-wisher of all living entities. So Bhrigu is saying that why do people who reject Vedas become heretics or Nastics? Because the Vedas are auspicious, and they give us the eternal path which leads to Krishna. So if one does not take shelter of Krishna, then also one can be considered to be Nastik. So Bhrigu speaks this verse to show that the followers of Lord Shiva will be atheists. And he does this by showing this dependency. From Krishna comes the Vedas. Those who follow the Vedas live regulated lives and they are theists. Those who live unregulated lives, like the followers of Shiva, do not follow the Vedas, do not follow Krishna, and therefore they are atheists. So that's all. With this and the next verse, he will explain that. Next verse we'll do next week because I want to just leave. But Prabhupada has a very long purport to this because he uses this also to establish some points that I'll quickly go through, bullet points. Prabhupada begins with what is the purpose of the Vedas. And the purpose of the Vedas is that it's giving the materially conditioned soul guidance on how to make spiritual advancement. And then he says that the Vedas are apurushaya, that they have no material origin, they are eternal. And Krishna is the original Vedavit, the knower of the Vedas, and the Vedanta Krit, or the compiler of the Vedas. This is Prabhupada quoting from Bhagavad Gita 15:15. Then he says the purpose of the Vedas is Vedesya cha sarva aham eva Veda. Same verse. The purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. So this purpose is accepted by all acharyas like Ramanacharya and Madhvacharya and scholars like Shankaracharya. The authorized way to receive the knowledge of the Vedas is through parampara. Tene Brahma Hridayadi. Prabhupada says that Brahma received it from Krishna, and similarly the others receive it through disciplic succession. The Varnashram system is presented in the Vedas. So this Varnashram system is a setu or a bridge to cross over from the material world into the spiritual world. So then Prabhupada concludes that one who follows the Vedas can elevate oneself to spiritual life. One who does not follow the Vedas becomes degraded and leads an animalistic life. So the Vedas is the deciding factor. Same point made by Krishna in 16th chapter. When Krishna talks about divine and demoniac nature, then he makes this point that those who are divine follow the Vedas. Those who do not follow Vedas are demoniac. That's the only criteria that they have. So I'll pause over here, and we have just a few verses left, but in the interest of time, we'll do it next week. I'll see if there's any comments or discussion.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Can you hear me without any disturbance? I'm on the road and...
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. One thing that you told, one who is in a muddy place will get muddy, and even though that person may not like it. And this is a very powerful statement, and how true it is. So many realizations on that personally. So I'm just wondering how one can stay without being affected by that, like Lord Shiva. Certainly, we cannot be Lord Shiva, but how we can follow that? What is that path to follow in order to be in that position, not getting muddy, even though in the muddy place?
Thank you, Prabhu. It's a nice practical question. So some thoughts on this that have been. It's a question that's often asked with different verbiage, but similar questions, similar underlying question. And different thoughts on this. One is that try and avoid being in a muddy place. So the instruction by Rupa Goswami in Updeshamrita that one should give up the association of worldly minded people. So it does not mean that one lives in seclusion, but it means that one does not intimately associate. So one goes to work, and maybe the work is a very passionate environment, but one may give association but not take there. So one may see things for what they are, but not allow to get affected. Second is that one has a constant it's an analogy that was given once, that if you're going out in the cold, then you take a lot of vitamin C to protect yourself, build your immunity. So when you're going out in this association that you know is going to be material, then make sure that you have a strong regimen of Vaishnav Sangha to counterbalance it. Because if you only get one kind of association, then it will overpower you. But if there is a good regimen, that weekends, temple, or namhats, or sanghas like this, so one is also getting a strong regimen of good Vaishnava association that is protecting them from the other kind of association that may be debilitating. And final thought is that if the person is potent and powerful enough, then the person can actually change that association to become conducive. So Rampal Maharaj gives the example of Prahlad Maharaj, that he was in the Gurukul where he was surrounded by children of demons, and they were all little demons, but on their way to become big demons. And what does Prahlad Maharaj do? He preaches to them, and he makes them devotees, that I don't have good association, let me create my association. So one, and may not be possible depending on time, place, circumstance, but it's something that one can, if the person is empowered and properly situated circumstantially also, the person can create association that would basically be favorable.
I guess, yes, Prabhu, thank you. Thank you for those wonderful points. And sometimes this kind of association, not necessarily in the workplace, but in the temple and amongst the Vaishnavas, unfortunately, it happens. And so I think same principle applies there too, I guess.
Same principle applies, but with a greater degree of caution, because if one is feeling that Vaishnava association is becoming debilitating, then one needs to exercise a lot more caution at that time, because the place where you go for shelter is a place where your shelter is being taken away. It's a troubling matter then. And fortunately, I think within the structure of what Prabhupada has given us, there are ways for us to address it. There are ways for us to either get help for those avenues that are creating a sadhu sangha. Right? There may be people coming to to temples, but not with a devotional attitude. Or there may be devotees who have, for whatever reason, have had developed different attitudes. But then there are ways that can be addressed within the structure of the society. And if everything fails, then the best thing is to keep a respectful distance. But you don't want to be in a situation where you're judging and offending Vaishnavas. You don't want to be in a situation where you're jeopardizing your own spiritual life. So the best thing to do is to keep a respectful distance. That way, you don't offend the Vaishnavas, but you protect your spiritual life also.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just one thought is about Brigu's curse. It seems that the curse is still going on.
Yes, Prabhupada says that. You see that in the Brahmins of the current day of Kali. You see that in the Mayavadi philosophers of Shankaracharya. So you see all that happening by the influence of the curse, just like the curse of Nandishwar is also going on. Right? In the fall of the Brahmins, you see the curse of Nandishwar.
Maybe this was supposed to happen and continues in Kali Yuga. It goes on like that. If there was no such curse, it would maybe not have happened.
Possible. Difficult to get. So the point that was there, that a lot of these curses are like Vishwanath Chakravarti says that the curses are incidental, they're not causal. So it's not because of Bhrigu Muni's curse that there are people in the mode of ignorance who are attached to unclean things. That thing is already there. There are already people in the mode of ignorance who are attached to unclean things. There are already these people who misinterpret the position of Lord Shiva and take shelter of him. Lord Bhrigu Muni, he simply formalized it. He said that this will happen. It's like you see a person who is stealing, and you know that eventually this person will get caught and sent to jail. And then you tell this person that you're stealing, you'll be sent to jail. So it's not that you're causing this person to steal, and it's not that you've created the system of jail to catch him. All of it is already there, but you're simply formalizing it. That you're stealing, there's a system of incarcerating people who are this mentality. This is going to happen to you. So we see that there's a little bit of circular cause and effect over here. That Bhrigu Muni and Nandishwar, they're stating what would have happened even without the curses. So whether it happened, the curses happened because of that, or because of what they said, the curse, these things are happening in a way, in a circle, it is irrelevant where it starts. But factually speaking, the real lesson that we get from this pastime is not the curses, but asat sangha, the insidious effect of bad association, Vaishnava prad, the effect of insulting Vaishnavas, Lord Shiva's position of being tolerant, being glorified. So those are the main lessons that one extracts from this pastime.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll end over here. Thank you so much. Vanchakalpatarubhayasya kripa sindhubhya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anantakoti Vaishnavind ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nithai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.